With 17 World Cup qualifications, 12 Confederation titles, 9 CONCACAF Gold Cups, and 3 CONCACAF Championships, Mexico has established themselves as a respectable nation in the world of football. As well as producing historic players such as Hugo Sanchez at Real Madrid, Javier Hernandez at Manchester United, and Rafa Marquez at Barcelona, Mexico has poured their culture throughout many of the biggest leagues in the beautiful game. And to quickly mention the massive support from the people of Mexico who wholeheartedly follow the team, and who create some of the best atmospheres in the world whenever their players are out on the field. Mexico has every aspect of a nation that you would expect to be seen as one of the greats in the history of football. Because of corruption, a failure to adapt to the changes of the game, and a lack of support given to young players, Mexico has never reached the potential they could have had, and if changes are not made, the future of the national team will only continue to suffer until it becomes a shell of the greatness it once held. When we look at previous players of the Mexican national team, such as Javier Chicharito Hernandez, Carlos Vela, Andres Cuadrado, Hector Herrera, Memo Ochoa, and Giovanni Dos Santos, we can see a trend where all of them have had experience playing in a European league. I'm sure many of you know that some of the top leagues in Europe are very fast-paced and physical, whereas La Liga MX is more slowed down and has a clash of similar formations and tactics that are stuck in the past. The Mexican League also has abolished relegations, so teams have basically no pressure if they perform poorly, and making a playoff position is very generous. The people who run this league love to pour money into keeping their star players, and this includes future Mexican players who are showing promising potential. These players include Israel Reyes, Chiquete Sanchez, Marcel Ruiz, Emilio Lara, and Osiel Herrera. With the low pressure within the league and the great paychecks these youngsters are gaining, what incentive do they have for moving to a more competitive league and challenging themselves? As mentioned earlier, when naming the previous generation of players who didn't make the move to Europe, we can see that those players ended up having a respectable career with the national team, because I am sure that playing for a team in Spain, England, or Germany was very impactful for their development as footballers. Also, it's not just the players' fault for their lack of development in their game. We also have to look at the coaches who have managed the national team. Juan Carlos Osorio, Tata Martino, and Jaime Lozano have been the most recent coaches for Mexico, and every single one of them have played tactics that in my opinion are pragmatic and outdated. There has been no adaptation in the way Mexico plays. We move the ball slowly, we transition from defense to attack with no intensity, and the chances we create are practically non-existent. The only aspect of our game you can consider decent is our defense. But that is not really saying much when you take in the fact that we pack all of our players behind the ball. When we attack, we don't make the smart decision. We either try for a long ball over the top, take a shot from 30 yards out, or a player will try to turn into prime Diego Maradona and attempt to dribble past 5 players. Football now is quicker, more physically demanding than ever, and requires every move to be as precise as possible. And now under our new coach Javier Aguirre, who is having his 3rd stint with the team, I see no possibility that our play style will improve. Although, to be fair, I know that at the moment our players are very mediocre, and Aguirre has worked at Mallorca, a team with possibly a similar level of players as Mexico. He was able to reach a Copa del Rey final, which is respectable for the players he had at his disposal. So if he can turn our mediocre players into a functioning team that has somewhat of a play style that can get results, then fair enough. Now to quickly touch on the corruption within the federation that runs the national team. I already mentioned the fact that they are giving crazy contracts to promising young players to keep them trapped in the Mexican League, and how they also removed relegation and promotion from the divisions. The federation makes these decisions because they are prioritizing making revenue rather than producing a foundation for the national team to build on. The federation is holding us back from truly getting to see what potential future stars are within the country. The federation must fund more into scouting the nation, and then they must send them to competitive leagues once they are ready. Because of the incompetence within the higher league of the National Team Federation, it has become hard as a Mexico supporter to have hope for tournaments that are coming up, including the 2026 World Cup. If you are a fan of Mexico, I am sure you have great memories of the glory Mexico once held. Even though we have never won a World Cup, we have had great runs that were filled with ambition and emotion. Mexico has had a culture of hard-working people who have developed grit and integrity. So to see your team represent these traits, you feel a sense of pride. When you see these players give their all and face giant nations within the game with no fear, such as Brazil, Argentina, France, and Spain, you can't help but feel excitement because you know deep down that as long as every player gives their all, we can beat anyone. And even though you may not feel those same emotions with the current group of players, you still continue to support your nation and hope for the time to come when Mexico can have that perfect run and eventually become world champions to firmly cement themselves as one of the greats in footballing history.